here this afternoon is School Redesign. But at this time, if I could introduce Herb Miller from Overdrive. So Herb, let's give them a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Certainly glad to be here. The goal of this panel that we're going to be getting into, and you're going to hear a lot more from my colleagues up here, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment, but really is thinking about how we're moving towards this digital transition, continuing this theme of school redesign, but where does digital fit in? And I think what's been interesting for me, even this morning, is there's been a lot of talk about the why. Why are we doing this? How are we engaging with kids? Why do we want our communities to transition more towards digital? We're not just buying a bunch of devices or asking our communities to fund different initiatives, but really thinking about the why. From college and career readiness, certainly we're all under the auspices of having to deal with state tests, and those are going to be digital, so we've got to prepare our students in engaging with text digitally. But also, how do we engage students more collaboratively, build different skills, be able to get them reading more, to be able to be much more engaged. And so I get the privilege as Director of Education at Overdrive, which is the leading provider of digital books to thousands of school systems, as well as public libraries across the US and beyond. I get the privilege of working with many different school systems and different approaches of how we're doing this transition towards digital, including St. Vrain that you heard from, and many of you that are in this at Learning Counsel, some of the more forward-thinking districts. And I think it's important to share some very specific examples. And so on the panel with me, and I'm going to have them give you a little bit more about their roles and perspectives, but we've got Denver Public Schools, Denton ISD, and Louisville ISD in Texas. Certainly being in Texas, we've got to have two of our panelists from the home state and be able to share different perspectives, especially from mid and larger sized districts, about how we do this effectively at scale. I think in all of our districts, whether small or large, there are pockets of this digital transition that are going really well. You've got examples of great teachers and great schools and great leaders, but doing it across a larger cross-section, a diverse grouping of schools and school systems is something that we're all moving towards as we try to move public education forward. So we at Overdrive have had the privilege of creating some new models of how we're both purchasing digital books and helping districts to create new paradigm shifts of what that should look like. Many of you are going through adoption processes and looking at changing how you're buying materials, but thinking about if we move digital, should that process change? And how do we engage students much more so and say that if we're going to invest in this transition towards digital, that we're actually getting more student usage out of that. And so what we're going to be discussing today really aligns with this vision of this broader paradigm shift towards digital and changing some of the ways that we've been doing things. So without further ado, I'd like to have each of the panelists introduce themselves and share a little bit about more of their key areas of focus as it particularly relates to this digital transition in their respective district.
Okay.
So.
I'm Caroline Hughes. I'm the Director of Ed Tech and Library Services for Denver Public Schools. I'm responsible for our e-library, which is our district-wide. It's in Overdrive for all students. Our team also purchases digital content that supplements the curriculum, particularly around inquiry. I work with our curriculum department. We purchase books for the literacy and for our ELA department. And then we also, our ed tech team sits on all curriculum adoptions to advise in terms of interoperability and usability for teachers and students. And then also increasingly is working on the professional development launch of those digital resources.
Okay, a lot of what I want to share is exactly what we just heard from Denver Public Schools. My name is Mike Mattingly, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction in Denton, Texas, Denton ISD. I would say that our primary focus has been on the marriage of curriculum instruction, my world, with instructional technology and ensuring that we're holding hands or that we have a relationship in this digital journey that we're going. I will tell you that probably our biggest efforts have been in ensuring that the teachers remain the top focus. And I know those of you that are working in school districts understand what I'm talking about. And ensuring that they have the highest quality professional development, as we just heard. And that has to come from both the instructional technology side of the house as well as the curriculum instruction and staff development side of the house. And so we do all of our planning together. We too have representation on each other's design teams so that there is a voice, and during our curriculum writing that we have those the right people from instructional technology to certainly embed all the opportunities for digital learning so that teachers feel that not only do they have the support when they're in the actual act of teaching, through the teaching and learning process, but they see the standards and all the different resources available to them. And even when they're working in PLCs, they can have really effective conversations about digital learning opportunities because they also have it in their curriculum documents.
I'm Robin Stout. I am the Administrator for Media Services and Emerging Technologies in the Digital Learning Department of Louisville ISD. And digital is literally my first name. The Digital Learning Department is the bridge between the Learning and Teaching Department and the Technology Department. And so the folks in our department are the folks that bridge those two worlds. They have a foot in each, and they both, I am in charge of curating some of the digital content for the district, along with other administrators in the Learning and Teaching Department. But my main passion is building capacity. And that would be in the members of the Digital Learning Department so that they can continue to build capacity in the teachers that are actually getting hands-on with the materials.
So now that we've gotten a sense of who's up here, I think it's important to dig into some specific examples on what's going on in each of these districts that are leading to more and more success. So I'd like for the panelists to share a little bit more about some of the key factors within your school system that you think are really influencing better implementation of this digital transition, and what's going on internally that's setting you up for that success.
You don't have to start with me every time, but
We
go
can,
ahead.
All right, well, I would say what's setting us up for success is to focus on few areas rather than lots of areas. And we've heard it in a couple of sessions today, you go fast by going slow. And those that are from Denton that are out in the audience, oh, he's going to say that again. Well, what they hear from me is that the slower you go, the more opportunity to get traction. And you want to get traction because if you go too fast, you'll start slipping and sliding, and then people do not have success, and then they throw up their hands and say, I told you this wasn't going to work. But if you go slow and do it spoonful by spoonful, and you're going back to professional development, that we return to this over and over again, it tells our teaching staff that what we're trying to do is going to be around a while, and so we're going to talk about it a while. And so with every professional development we have, we're going deeper and deeper and deeper, not just surface level. And so that a year from now, they're still hearing about the same digital components or capacities that we're trying to build in that classroom. I would also say that, secondly, is that we want things to be user-friendly, not only for our students, but also for our teachers. We want things to be running, and we want them to be at full force. We want dependability, and we've made that commitment. The board, the superintendent, all the way down has made that commitment. If you will give us a digital classroom, our commitment is that we're going to provide you the resources, and sometimes that's the everything behind the curtains. That's not my world, but I can't do my thing without them doing their thing, and that's really important. And then I would say thirdly is that there's some flexibility and nimbleness to whatever we do. That we want a consistent message across our district from classroom to classroom. All math teachers can talk about digital learning the same way, but we also want to tell our community that sometimes our message changes. And because we're many times criticized because education is not changing. So it's okay that our message changes because we're trying to change with the world. And also the capability of information, the data that we collect, the data management is useful and accessible to all kinds of departments across the school district. I cannot tell you how many times I get calls from other divisions or departments, the counselors, which are not in my division, they want this, that, or the other for students. So that's an example, and I know that you've experienced those sorts of things. So when we bring on digital learning or digital programming, those are the kinds of questions we ask. Are you capable of sharing this information across our district for whoever the end user may be?
And I'll tell you, sometimes I've felt like we've had the absolute opposite tactic. We're in year 5 of a one-to-one integration for grades 4 through 12 of iPads for our students. There's 53,000 students in the district. And there were times when we were first rolling it out that we felt like we were trying to drive a semi-truck up a mountain bike path. And so it was actually the opposite of moving slowly and methodically, even though we had a solid plan in place because the transition was so great in the period of less than a year. We had a lot of folks that relied very heavily on support and coaching, in addition to the digital transition with the materials and the resources. When we did our textbook adoptions over the past several years, we very meaningfully chose those resources so that they would be digital and would be available on the student iPads. We put a lot of training and manpower into our teachers. We did train the trainer models. We did boot camp type models of training, and we're very deliberate in that process. And so now that we've been in it for a few years, the students are so acclimated to living digitally that it's now an expectation. And so as we go and continue to implement learning management systems or going a little bit deeper with the digital resources, then they're expecting that. They're wanting more, and they're continuing to grow and to take that in.
I'll share 2 quick examples in Denver. One involved, we decided to go with a middle school science curriculum that was completely digital. It was the first time we were doing that with a curriculum. And I've been responsible for the ed tech department for 2 years, and when I first started, was the first time we have 5 ed tech specialists for the district in about 160 schools, someone to each content area to really become an expert in that content area in terms of how technology can support that area. When curriculum adoption happened, when we sat on that, we really pushed to be true partners. And it was really exciting because we flew out, did the professional learning with the curriculum team, same as their people were, and then we now meet bi-weekly to talk about how implementation is going. In the first week of school, our team was out in classrooms to partner with teachers on that facilitation. So we feel like that was really an example of how we worked closely to think about how teaching and learning will be impacted when it's every day. And part of that, traditionally, we always look at minimum devices for a building based on digital assessments. And so this was the first time where we were really saying, if you're going to buy a digital curriculum, then you have to make sure these classrooms are going to have access to devices every day, and that those devices will be able to handle the requirements of that. So it was actually a great opportunity to make device purchasing about instruction instead of about assessment. And then the other example is when we went online with our ebook, our Overdrive collection. We started that actually, a shout out to Cal, because he is one of our neighbors in the Front Range. I was able to say, look at what St. Vrain's doing and the kind of investment they're making for their kids, and that we don't, unfortunately, have really strong libraries in all of our buildings. We're very site-based. So our ebook collection was a way of ensuring equity across all neighborhoods, all schools. And one of our focus areas was culturally responsive education. So we were able to align it with that and curate collections so that all of our students are represented and have communities that reflect themselves. So that was a way to, again, look at the why of what is this going to do for kids.
Excellent. So as we start to think through both what's going on inside the district, there's many of us on the outside of districts, and being a former educator myself, how we can partner best with school systems to ensure that you're meeting your goals of educating kids and engaging your communities in the way that really makes sense. And so I think it's important for you to share what you look for and what you need in that partnership with outside companies to be able to achieve some of those goals. And certainly, just for transparency's sake, Louisville and Denver are current Overdrive clients and have been with us for a while and can certainly share that perspective. But this is meant to be from a broader perspective. How do we really want to engage with the outside partners?
I would say there are three things that are absolute musts in our district. And because most of our instructional materials and resources are delivered digitally, terms of services is crucial. We have actually reached out to partners where we're unclear about terms of services. Sometimes it's an app that's built in somebody's basement. And we've actually had them not be able to answer our questions. And so clear, concise terms of service, science, people that understand how it can be applied in a classroom. One of the other things is student data privacy and security, and the most important is the end user experience. The end user experience is very different for a 4-year-old than it is for an 18-year-old. And so often when we're looking at digital products, that you may not have the absolute best product, but if you have a better user experience, that would, in some cases, go a little higher with us. We actually moved to Overdrive after trying another product, and it was based on that end user experience and ease of use. Now, when we did move with Overdrive, it was absolutely amazing because we realized that they had a vast variety of titles, and then also that ease of use for the student.
I would echo what you're saying, ease of use and student data privacy. I'd say interoperability is just a huge thing for us. It's frustrating. One product might have better content, but if we're asking teachers to use all these different systems, and we have huge teacher turnover in some of our schools, it's over 50% every year. We need something where we can send, like we use Schoology, the ability to make one place where students and teachers and parents can go is huge for us. I'd say non-English languages is another thing that's huge for us. Having the interface and navigation in Spanish and additional languages is important to us. And I think one thing Overdrive that we really appreciated about working with them was truly partnering with us towards a future state that would serve our kids. And so, for example, there was no curriculum tab or site as part of Overdrive when we started working with them, and we felt like that was something we heard over and over from teachers is there a place where I can go, where I can see what novels and audiobooks are available to me, as a 7th grade teacher. And so Overdrive worked with us to develop that. When we started, there were only 10 curated collections, and that's something we saw as really important, and that has changed. So I think an ability to, we know our partners have their own roadmaps and the own things that they're dedicated to doing, but to be willing to sit down with us and talk about what are our priorities for our students was critical.
Caroline was really reading off my notes.
Are we like-minded?
But I think most school districts would agree that interoperability and terms of service are huge, especially when you have choices. You want to be sure that you have a good working relationship with any vendor that you choose to use. I also want to echo the second or third language offerings. Our states have large populations of second language learners. In our school district, our second highest language obviously is Spanish, but the growing language, Arabic, and there are not a lot of teachers out there to help us with that, so assisting with ensuring that those students keep their language and add English to their languages is important, and also safety of data. We can't emphasize that enough, especially in terms of the opportunities for the district to be held at ransom. There have been districts across the nation have been put in bad situations, and we don't want to be a part of causing our district to be vulnerable. Also, I would say in terms of content, we want something that goes beyond state standards. Sometimes a vendor will offer up, yes, this meets all your state standards, but that does not meet all of the teaching and learning that we want to interact with over the course of a course. And so we want to see how we are headed towards preparing students for college and career readiness, or being able to do that. So we need to see that sort of thing, and then also be able to talk about ISTE standards and demonstrate that you're aware of those, and you can demonstrate how you've incorporated that into your product.
Excellent. So it was brought up earlier that teachers have access to so much, and yet time is the real issue of how do they then use that time to really impact student learning. And so with all the OER content, and even at Overdrive, we work with thousands of publishers and then millions of pieces of content. But the whole idea is to narrow it down so that that particular student can get the right content at the right time when they actually need it, and not just be overwhelmed by the amount of content. And that really gets to me, the idea of personalization, and that student and that educator being able to easily find and access the material that they need at that time. And so I'm curious if each of you can share a little bit more about how you've used this digital transition to really support that personalization and students taking ownership over their own learning with this digital transition.
Yeah, I think we've tried to start with professional learning. I think, as Cal said, really you have to teach kids how to have that skill set. We see that we have a one-to-one pilot in 14 of our schools where we have a digital coach in every one of those schools. And we've seen how over time, kids, especially in high school, have been taught, have been spoon-fed, haven't been given a lot of choice, and then they really resist that when they are. And we even see that with our highest performing students. They want to know how to get an A, and they want someone to tell them how to get an A. And so really it's this huge culture shift. And the younger they go, we actually find there's more flexibility with that, both with students and with teachers. So really the professional learning, I think with our coaches working with school leadership to talk about what students need and how to make those shifts towards facilitation and personalized learning. We're also looking at it from a central viewpoint of how do we get them the different kinds of resources and do professional learning in partnership with our central office. For example, working with our special ed teams and our English language development teams to think about what are the affordances of our digital resources that support them. So digital audio has been something we've talked a lot about, natural narration in digital resources, so it's actually a human being they're hearing speak. Overdrive does have dyslexic font, which we appreciate. So what are those things that will help every student get what they need to support their learning? We do with Schoology, there is an ability for students to set their own goals and track their progress towards their goals. So we've done that in Google Classroom too. So what are ways to help facilitate for teachers those pieces? A capstone portfolio is something, we have new graduation requirements in Colorado, so every student will have to have that at some point. So we're also looking at that. How can they curate their own work to demonstrate mastery?
In Denton, we are a standards-based grading school district, which allows students to demonstrate new learning. A grade may be taken, but they can demonstrate that they have continued their learning beyond the point in which we took the grade. And that's typically digital portfolio or other evidence that they can collect that evidence in a digital manner. And most of our teachers will find a way, and I'm talking about pre-K up through 12, and whether that's through a camera on their device, whatever it is, or presentations, scenarios, there's just all different sorts of ways that they can do that, which supports our standards-based grading way of doing things. Also, we have found blended learning to be a very, very effective way for students to feel like the course has been personalized for them for the obvious reasons, but teachers have given us really positive feedback on their end as well as the students too. And I think this is going to be probably the most growing area for us with our older students is the blending learning courses. Also, I would say the thing that we've also had to do is to prepare an environment for collaboration. Students love to collaborate. They are either collaborating through social media or just through the digital devices, but and also face-to-face. So what we've had to do as a district is, because we're a fast-growing district, we're building schools every year, that we're redesigning the bricks and mortar inside the schools to facilitate that environment so kids can collaborate most anywhere that they are, and the fact that they have they're wired at all times and have electricity and that sort of thing. But all those are the different sorts of ways I think that we're meeting the needs of students through that question.
We're big proponents of student voice and choice in the district, as opposed to an assignment that every child completes the same project. We like to have the kids use, especially now that they have their devices, choose what method of demonstrating their learning best suits them. So we have students that are building web pages. We have students that are still using poster boards. We have students that are creating videos. And as long as it's addressing the learning standards, then that's good and that's encouraged. We also have implemented e-portfolios at elementary that follow the students all the way through their academic career, and we hope that they can take them with them and use them for college or career afterwards, after they leave LASD. And the students get to choose and demonstrate what products they put into their e-portfolios that would best demonstrate the pillars of learning that are in our framework. In addition to that, we're also working with engineering by design, UBD 2.0, and then design thinking, and having students step outside of the drill and kill curriculum to do more exploration and to do more challenge-based and problem-based learning. And we have found that they really can come up with some amazing work when they start taking ownership and developing their own projects.
And we've certainly seen that move towards personalization happen with students creating their own content that can be uploaded into the district's Overdrive system, as well as not just having, every student is assigned a particular book at a particular time, but across the different themes or goals of the standards, giving students more and more choice about the content that's meaningful and of interest to them. And so having that flexibility is certainly something that can be leveraged, especially in the digital environment. So with that, I appreciate the panel, and thank you very much, Robin, Mike, and Caroline, for your participation. I think we all learned quite a bit and have food for thought, and as we continue to all learn during these couple days, hopefully you'll each take a couple key pieces from today's session to take back to your respective home districts. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Frida.